Coming up next, we're going to go behind the top 10 songs of this very same week from the year 1967. It's a mere few months before the Summer of Love. Now, this top 10 has some of the greatest songs of all time. We still listen to them today. And as usual, we have the actual artist telling us the stories firsthand, plus your stories and your dedications. Who is the real number one all these years later? Is it the Beatles, the Stones, the Supremes, maybe a rookie, even a one-hit wonder? You're going to be very surprised. Next on the Hit Song Redux. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever watched Dr. Johnny Fever on WKRP in Cincinnati and you wanted to be just like him, you're going to dig this channel.
Dr. Johnny Fever, and I am burning up in here.
Make sure that you subscribe below right now. Click that bell so that you get the story straight from the artist about the greatest songs. You can also become an honorary producer on our Patreon page by clicking on the link in the description. We have some really awesome content going up there, exclusively there, just for patrons. And you can also see our new merch, including brand new entries into the Vintage Years collection. So it's time for another edition of our show, the Hit Song Redux. This is, of course, where we travel back to a week in the golden era of rock and roll, and we re-rank the top 10 songs of that specific week based on how much the world has listened to them since. Since our peak position on the Billboard Hot 100. Now, this show includes the actual artists talking about these songs, plus your stories and your dedications. It's always a lot of fun. Now, to clarify, this isn't my top 10. This isn't the top 10 for the year. It's the actual top 10 from this exact week 55 years ago. And we count them down, and then we run them through a recalibration system, which tells us what the real top 10 is based on all-time streams and views. This program is a tribute to my hero, the great Casey Kasem and his American Top 40. I think we all grew up with it. You know, at 6 years of age, I decided that I wanted to be Casey Kasem and Dr. Johnny Fever from WKRP. So funny, I used to practice in my room. This time we travel back to 1967, like I said, 55 years ago. At that moment, if you wanted to see a movie at the local cinema, you'd have to choose between the Steve McQueen picture, The Sand Pebbles.
Here is an unparalleled emotional experience.
Or the film adaptation of Thoroughly Modern Millie, starring Julie Andrews.
Academy Award winner, Best Music Score, Thoroughly Modern Millie.
On TV, you have the classic Camp Fest Batman with Adam West and Burt Ward. You also had Star Trek.
Go where no man has gone before.
Mission Impossible. And the Monkees. Man, what a time. So let's get into it. Now, by the way, you can listen to these songs in their playlist below while I count them down. Right after I do. So coming in at number 10, you had one of the greatest rock bands of all time who are still going strong with a guitarist that might be 200 years old, nobody knows. It's the Rolling Stones with a Ruby Tuesday.
Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday.
Now the Stones returned to the Ed Sullivan Show in mid-January of '67 to perform songs that were going to be included in their soon-to-be-released album Between the Buttons. The first number was Ruby Tuesday. And then they followed it with the infamous censored version of Let's Spend the Night Together. You probably heard this story, in case you haven't. Earlier in the day, CBS and Ed Sullivan himself required Mick Jagger to change the lyric, Let's Spend the Night Together.
Let's spend the night together. Now I need you more.
To Let's Spend Some Time Together. When the Stones hesitated, Ed Sullivan threw down the gauntlet and he said, either the song goes or you go. Now, while performing the song, Mick did as he was told, but he did roll his eyes and sarcastically exaggerated the altered line. A bit later, Jim Morrison, of course, would be asked, not to sing Girl We Couldn't Get Much Higher on Light My Fire. He agreed not to sing it. To Ed Sullivan's chagrin, the Lizard King not only sang it, but he put emphasis on it.
Yeah, we couldn't get much higher.
Now, the Stones released on that same single, Let's Spend the Night Together and Ruby Tuesday as a double A-side, as many did back then.
Never say where she came from.
And Ruby Tuesday was even more of a hit than it might have otherwise been, as DJs across the nation, they preferred to play the tender ballad rather than the other more controversial side. Made it a #1 hit.
Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday.
The song was actually inspired by Keith Richards' girlfriend, Linda Keith.
I heard her say.
So at the #9 spot is a girl group who was always giving the Beatles and the Stones a run for their money with the legendary writing and producing team of Holland Dozier Holland that supported them. It's the Supremes with Love Is Here and Now You're Gone. Here's what original Supreme Mary Wilson said. So Love Is Here and Now You're Gone, another #1 hit, of course, and this was recorded in LA instead of Hitsville.
What?
Yeah.
Well, you know more than I do. You got me on that one, honey. I can't remember when we recorded Love Is Here, Now You're Gone. But I tell you what, I love that song. It's one of those songs that's so beautiful lyrically. You're talking about love, even though you don't know love is gone. It's so beautiful in terms of what it means, the love. It's talking about love, real love. I love the sway of the song.
Coming in at #8, it's an oldie but a goodie, an easy listening song from a musical. It's My Cup Runneth Over by Ed Ames.
My cup runneth over with.
This is a song that I clearly remember from childhood. I was riding in the back of my grandma's car. She would always listen to this easy listening AM station, and it came on all the time.
Sometimes in the morning when shadow.
Ames recorded under the name Eddie Ames while he was still with the Ames brothers, releasing the single Bean Song, Which Way to Boston.
Way to Boston, which way to Boston, Beantown, U.S.
That happened in January 1957. From there, Ames actually played the role of Mingo, an Oxford-educated Cherokee in the ABC TV show Daniel Boone. During the Daniel Boone TV show, Ames continued to sing, and he released a lot of different hits. There was Try to Remember.
Try to remember the kind of sad.
Which I think was his signature song. This song, My Cup Runneth Over.
Sometimes in the evening when you
Apologize.
I apologize, give me back.
Then Who Will Answer?
But who will answer?
My Cup Runneth Over, that was a #1 hit on the AC charts.
Cup runneth over with.
Coming in at #7, it's one of the most revolutionary songs in the history, the annals of popular music. It's from an all-star band whose members would go on to make such an impact as solo artists and in bands soon after. It's For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. Written and sung by Stephen Stills, Captain Many Hands, who would, of course, form Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Young later. Neil Young went solo. Richie Furay would form Poco, the pioneer of the country rock sound. But here's what Stephen Stills told me about the song. The song title, For What It's Worth, tell us that story, because there's always been the urban legend about handing the tape to Ahmet Ertegun, and you said...
For What It's Worth, there's a new song. There's something happening here, which would be the obvious title, or Stop Children Must Have Sound, or Look What's Going. Just nothing ever lent it to a title.
Ahmet Ertegun, who was the president of Atlantic Records, came out to LA to hear what kind of songs we had for another album. They were ready to go. They played some songs, so I played some songs, Stephen played some songs, and as we're packing up our instruments, I can hear Stephen right now say, oh, I got another one For What It's Worth. That was it.
That's one of my favorite rock and roll stories ever. So at #6, we have the high-octane turbo supercharged spectacular Mitch Ryder and Detroit Wheels with their hit Sock It To Me Baby.
Sock it to me, baby, baby. Sock it to me, baby, baby.
Mitch Ryder was one of the most influential artists of the decade. you know, inspiring everybody from Bruce Springsteen to John Mellencamp to Kenny Loggins. I was extremely fortunate to interview Mitch, and here's what he said about Sock It To Me.
Unfortunately, that record came out at the same time the psychedelia explosion was occurring in America. So, you know, it was R&B took a big hit, a real big hit at that time.
Halfway to the top spot at number 5, it's a remake of the Four Tops' first big hit from a singer who had quite a few successful remakes. It's Johnny Rivers with Baby I Need Your Lovin'. Johnny Rivers actually took his remake higher in the charts than the Four Tops did. Johnny Rivers performed Baby I Need Your Lovin' in an orchestral pop style that was arranged by Marty Paich. Marty Paich was David Paich's father of Toto Africa fame. Here's what Johnny Rivers said about the song in my interview with him.
That was a song that, you know, I'd started playing it at the Whiskey and we were getting a good reaction to it. So then we went in around the time we cut Poor Side of Town.
Come back, baby, to the poor side of town.
Some of those other songs like that and cut it. 1 or 2 takes on that too, just like Poor Side of Town. I just had it down, you know, and we didn't do a lot of takes in those days. I like to get in there. I would run it with the band, cut 2 or 3 times.
Zeroing in at the number 4 slot on our countdown is a band that at one point, they were going toe-to-toe with the Beatles. In 1965, actually, they outsold the Beatles. It's Herman's Hermits with There's a Kind of Hush.
Kind of hush all over the world.
Led by the charming young chap Peter Noone, the Hermits ruled the charts for a few years in that time.
You can hear the sounds of lovers in love.
The song was recorded by a couple different other artists before Peter and his Hermits took it to the top of the charts. It was first introduced on the 1966 album Winchester Cathedral by Jeff Stevens' group, the New Vaudeville Band. We've covered that one before. Like that group's hit Winchester Cathedral.
Winchester Cathedral.
There's a Kind of Hush was conceived as a neo-British music hall number, although it's a less overt example of that style.
Kind of hush all over the world.
The first single version of There's a Kind of Hush, that was recorded in 1966 by Gary and the Hornets, which is a preteen male band from the States.
Kind of hush all over the world.
Here's what Peter Noone told me about this song in our recent interview.
All those early 60s bands all thought in 4, you know. If the Beatles were on stage in a place where you were in the dressing room downstairs, the only sound you would hear would be this. All their feet, everything was in 4. All the songs were in 4. And because we were part of that British invasion thing, we were thinking in 4. So we didn't know how to approach There's a Kind of Hush until John Paul Jones said, how about we go da-na, da, da-na, da. My friends who are in bands are always surprised when they come to the concert because I go, there's a kind of hush, and everybody in the audience shouts, all over the world. It's like, everybody's like, whoa, I didn't realize that was such a big song. Oh, yeah. But it is a big song.
Coming in at number 3, it's one of the A-sides of what I believe to be the greatest 2-sided single in the history of the planet. One of this band's many classic double A-sides hits, it's the Beatles, the greatest ever, with Penny Lane.
Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes.
The other side of this single is, of course, Strawberry Fields Forever.
Strawberry Fields Forever.
And that classic Paul versus John for the lead single battle that went on from time to time. Penny Lane would go to number 1 and Strawberry Fields Forever would go to number 8. Well, Strawberry Fields deserved number 1. Penny Lane was Paul's reply to John's Strawberry Fields Forever. These two songs, recalling childhood memories, constituted a form of perfection in the art of pop songs. Penny Lane is a Liverpool neighborhood, a street, and a bus station through which Paul used to travel in order to get to John's house.
Penny Lane, there is a fireman with an hourglass, and in his
I lived in Penny Lane on a street called Newcastle Road, so I was the only Beatle that lived in Penny Lane. John explained this in 1980. Later on, he left the neighborhood and moved to Woolton. Finally, it was Paul who dedicated a song to it.
Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes.
He'd been thinking about the topic since, I guess, 1965, and he used it when he was searching for ideas for the next album. While John had listed the places where he grew up in his original lyrics to In My Life, Paul introduced the characters on Penny Lane, whether they were fictitious or real. For example, the Barber Bioletti really existed. The fire station was nearby. There was a bank on the corner, even though the character of the banker was imaginary.
Shaves another customer. We see the banker sitting waiting.
And poppies were sold every year at the time of Remembrance Day, November 11th.
Prettiness is selling poppies from a tray.
Blue suburban skies. You know, Paul uses a poetic and fairly psychedelic vision to describe this neighborhood, which was by some accounts quite ordinary, but not to him, not to us.
Beneath the blue suburban skies, I say.
This song will always remind me of my dad. One of his favorite Beatles songs, the first one that he showed to me, actually. He told me he used to picture what, Penny Lane might look like in his mind as he listened to Paul describe it in the song. Now we're at the bridesmaid position, as they call it, just one away from crowning the king of the charts. This is a song from an American group that was also very competitive at this moment and had a lot of promise before running into some major obstacles. But when they were on, they were as good as anyone. It's the Mamas and the Papas with Dedicated to the One I Love. Dedicated to the One I Love was written by Loman Pauling and Ralph Bass, which was a hit for the Five Royales.
This is dedicated to the one I love.
Shirelles.
I know it's hard for you, my baby.
And the Mamas and the Papas.
Before you go to bed, my baby.
Pauling was the guitarist of the Five Royales, group that recorded the original version of the song produced by Bass. That was in 1957. Their version was re-released in 1961 and charted. What's interesting about the Mamas and the Papas, their singles a lot of times differ significantly from their album counterparts. Dedicated to the One I Love used the same mix for both single and album. However, there are different versions of the song available. The mono single and mono album versions are exactly the same. In both, Michelle Phillips' voice is double-tracked, but mixed down into the sound of one voice. Mama Cass's vocals are far more prominent on these, as is the piano part. The Mamas and the Papas are just a fascinating group with a really intriguing backstory. We really need to dial up an in-depth feature on them. I'm surprised that they've never made a biopic on this group. I read a long time ago that they were talking about doing one. Let me know in the comments if we should cover this or their amazing songs like California Dreamin' or Monday Monday. Let me know in the comments.
Dedicated to the one I love. This is dedicated.
Okay, here we are. The #1 position, the top of the heap, a #1, as the chairman of the board, Frank Sinatra, would once say. This is a song that the second you hear the title, its melody and the lyrics are in your head for the next 3 days.
A #1, top of the list.
No, it's not New York, New York. I was just saying that. This is a song that the second you hear the title of it, its melody and lyrics are in your head for the next 3 days. It's the Turtles with the sing-along classic, Happy Together.
So happy together.
The Turtles were formed by Mark Volman and Howard Kalin. They were saxophone players who played whatever was trendy to make a living at that time. They did surf rock, acoustic folk, whatever was cool at that time. Along with their own bands, they played backup for Sonny and Cher and the Righteous Brothers and also the Coasters. After a while, they gave up saxophone and became singers. When the Beatles took over America, they tried to pass themselves off as British singers and renamed themselves the Turtles with a Y, Turtles with a Y. A record company made them change the name to the regular spelling of the Turtles with a U, and they tried to make them sound like another animal group, the Birds. And their output of downer songs just flopped.
Don't try to change me or rearrange me to satisfy the...
So they decided to do Happy Together, which surprisingly, many artists passed on this song. Should do a feature on this. I'll get the interviews. At this moment in time, the musical landscape, it was filled with psychedelia and experimentation, pet sounds.
Wouldn't it be nice?
And then, of course, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So the Turtles looked to outside songwriters to compete. After hearing a demo of an enchantingly hummable ditty with a surefire sing-along chorus, the Turtles cut a brassy version of this song, and it sent them to #1. Now, even though the song's called Happy Together, this is not a song about a couple in love. According to Gary Bonner, who wrote the song with Alan Gordon, it's about unrequited love. Our desperate singer wants the girl to imagine how the world could be so very fine, proposing what would happen if I should call you up. The lyrics during the song's fade out, which is, how is the weather?
And how is the weather?
That's when the song's narrator realizes that they'll never be more than passing acquaintances, because he's pretty much retorting to surface talk, almost as if a means to cover his heartbreak, or breaking down, really. My 13-year-old, he told me a few weeks ago that he thinks this is the catchiest song of all time. We ended up singing it together when he just brought it up. Our community had a lot of things to say about this as well. Viewer Joe B said, Happy Together is the perfect song for telling someone you're interested in them and your vision of a life with the one you love. Through the good and bad, loving one another will get us through. Then our viewer Patty Taylor said, Happy Together was a swing choir routine in her high school in the late 70s. She said that had great memories rehearsing it and just having a lot of fun. Viewer Patrick McDonald said, Happy Together. I can't see me loving nobody but you for all of my life. I always sing that line to my wife, is what he said. Said they've been together for over 42 years and married 39 years this August. Well, Mrs. McDonald, this is dedicated to you from Patrick. Here's to 42 more years. All right, it's time to punch this top 10 into the Hit Song Recalibrator and get the real top 10 based on all-time views and streams. Here we go. At number 10, it's Sock It To Me Baby by Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wills with just under 1 million. A true hidden gem, I guess.
Sock it to me, baby, baby. Sock it to me, baby, baby.
At number 9, it's Ed Ames with My Cup Runneth Over with about 4 million streams.
My cup runneth over with.
At number 8, The Supremes with Love Is Here and Now You're Gone with 7 million streams. At number 7, it's Johnny Rivers with Baby I Need Your Lovin' with 7.5 million streams. Really close there. At number 6, it's Herman's Hermits with There's a Kinda Hush with 10 million streams.
Kind of hush all over the world.
At number 5, it's the Mamas and the Papas with Dedicated to the One I Love with 62 million streams.
This is dedicated.
At number 4, it's the Rolling Stones with Ruby Tuesday with 80 million streams.
Goodbye, Ruby Tuesday.
Okay, the top 3 are really close. At number 3, it's the Beatles with Penny Lane, 281 million streams. Pretty shocked here. How many of you thought that that would be the easy number one? Well, at the runner-up slot, number 2, it's the Turtles with Happy Together at 391 million.
So happy together.
So that means we have a new number 1 song. It's the revolutionary rock anthem, For What It's Worth, by Buffalo Springfield, with an amazing 446 million streams and views.
Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
So there it is, the real top 10 for this same week in March of 1967. Gosh, an amazing top 10 for sure. I mean, 3 of these songs, the top 3 of the recalibrated top 10, are just no doubt about it, legendary songs. And at least 7 of these top 10s are great songs. Let's do a little side-by-side comparison with some of the mainstream modern-day hits of today.
Now you're texting all my friends, asking questions they never even liked you.
Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
That I never would, told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody.
Betty Lane is in my ears and in my eyes.
Ski go third on beats, I put it in for you, I spin for you, whatever you with, I'm with it.
So happy together.
What do you think? Is mainstream music better now or then? Let us know in the comments. You know how I feel. Share your thoughts on that. If we did not get to your dedication or memory, I promise you we will. We get so many of them. We're trying to do it right. Share with us in the comments as well. If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe. Check us out on Patreon. Check out our merch. Get your tickets to Professor of Rock Live. All these things are about keeping the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.